Hello, Sunshine. I'm ALEXI LALAS, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This week, we'll be talking about MLS's return to home markets and the quote-unquote regular season resuming. We're talking about Pirlo and Pulisic and Zidane and Champions League and salary caps and Chicharito and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you on this Monday, August 10th in the year 2020?
I am doing very, very well.
Very, very well. Really? Well, that puts you in the minority relative to most other people on the planet as we continue.
Is that overly enthusiastic for the times we live in?
No, it was okay. It's refreshing, as a matter of fact. But as I said, relative to most people out there, we have our ups and downs and our good and bad days as this, what sandwich of a year that is 2020 continues to progress. But I'm glad that you are in a good headspace and you are positive about what is going on, at least in your life. It doesn't mean that everything's going on perfectly outside, but at least in your life right now, that you can see the sunny side of things going on. It is. We are in the middle of summer. We are coming to you from Los Angeles, as we often are, and it is another glorious day here in the city of Angels. Mosse, what have you done over the past week with regards to stuff that you are watching? Our viewers and our listeners are always interested to get caught up. Have you gotten caught up, by the way? Because I know you had a backlog and a catalog of things that you had not watched.
Well, last night I did watch the season finale of Perry Mason, which I thought was terrific and really set things up nicely for the next season. So very happy with the way they ended that. I also watched an absolutely chilling documentary on Amazon Prime called The Last Narc, which examines the death of Kiki Camarena, a DEA agent who was kidnapped and murdered by the Guadalajara cartel in 1985. It's a lot of the stuff that they hinted at on Narcos, but it's explained more fully. It delves into this long-held conspiracy theory that the CIA might have actually been involved in his abduction and murder, and it makes a very compelling case that that's true. So I recommend it for anybody who's certainly a Narcos fan, but even if you're not, it's still a story that's worth learning about. It was very well done, and like I said, absolutely chilling.
Speaking of docs, now that I'll be gone before dark, the documentary on the Golden State Killer is done and finished. I binged it. I have seen it all. What were your thoughts on that? For those that don't know, it's on HBO, and it follows the tracking over multiple decades of what came to be known as the Golden State Killer, but it also follows it through a woman who, along with other people, kind of amateur sleuthed and wrote books about it and contributed at least to the knowledge and if not the actual capture ultimately, but at least contributed to people keeping it active and digging up things that might not have been dug up in the past. Did you enjoy it?
I thought it was incredible. It operates on parallel tracks because it examines the case itself, but also this woman, Michelle McNamara's obsession with the case and how it consumed her life. And as horrific as it was to learn about all the crimes committed by the Golden State Killer, actually, the most affecting part for me was Michelle McNamara's death. Mm-hmm. It was just so sad. They show texts from her from like the night before when she's talking about, helping her daughter out with her homework and with her husband, talking to her husband, Patton Oswalt, who's a famous comedian. And then she went to sleep and never woke up again. And it's just, very powerful stuff. I give it very high marks.
I thought it was good. I give it high marks, except I did think that was almost a separate story that deserved a story unto itself. And since at the end, they made it very, very clear that nothing that the sleuths, including Michelle, actually did ultimately led to this capture. It was much more serendipity. It's almost like I would want to see the documentary from the police side of it. Ultimately, there's probably much more to this story, but definitely worth your time. About 6 episodes, maybe.
Six, I believe.
Six every single week, and some amazing stuff and a peek behind this serial killer that lasted decades and decades, and unfortunately, ultimately, they think has been apprehended. I think the trial is still going on as we speak. All right, Mosse, enough of our watching habits. You ready to light this candle?
I am.
All right. As you know, in regular times, we start off with my more formal State of the Union, but these are not regular times. And so we are going to jump right into the show. And we're going to start off with MLS. Mosse, because we are recording this on a Monday, tomorrow is the final of the MLS's back tournament. So let's kind of put a bow on the MLS's back tournament, and then we're going to spin it forward to what is coming, and coming really quick. Basically, just so people know, MLS's back tournament, which even if you are the biggest hater and skeptic out there, I think you have to admit and give kudos and credit that it is an undeniable success on and off the field for Major League Soccer, comes to a conclusion with the final, Orlando versus Portland on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we're basically back to the MLS regular season in the form of Nashville and Miami, who, for those that may or may not remember, were jettisoned from the tournament because of positive COVID tests, and they weren't part of the MLS's back tournament, so they still had to make up 3 games, and they will start making up those games here in the next week, and then everybody else will come online. But first and foremost, the MLS's back tournament. I was on a call with the commissioner and a bunch of other media, and it was amazing for me to hear the questions as they went on. And basically it was the same question over and over again to the commissioner about what they're going to do here that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But at one point, the commissioner obviously was getting a little bit fed up, and he came out swinging in that, he was patting himself and everyone on the back. And look, they should take a bow, saying you, talking about the media and a lot of other folks out there, were very, very skeptical and critical of how this was going to happen in these days that we live in. And it obviously irked him and irked the league. But I think it's to be expected. And while I do think that there are those out there that I don't think it's fair to say that they wanted the Orlando bubble to fail, I think that there were those that went above and beyond in terms of the fear porn out there of what this was potentially going to be. And look, part of the media's job is to try to poke holes in things, and you have to be able to stand up. And MLS did stand up, and a lot of the criticisms, especially at the beginning, were legitimate and completely understandable. But you could see that the commissioner wanted to, at least at this moment, acknowledge that they did something unprecedented. They did something without a net and without a template and a history to follow, and it worked out. And so now it's the culmination on Tuesday. You can check it out. Our colleagues at ESPN will be broadcasting the final of this tournament. Mosse, I guess just in a general sense, how has this tournament happened for you over the last month on and off the field? Well, how are you going to remember this tournament, I guess?
I've greatly enjoyed it. I think it's been a major success. Now, I do have to keep reminding myself that it's not over, because we signed off our coverage last Wednesday after Portland defeated Philadelphia in the first semifinal, and we went off the air that night with an essay that you wrote that was incredible, reflecting on this whole thing. It was very end of tournament-ish. And so I've had to remind myself, wait, that wasn't the end of the tournament. We still had a couple of games left, and now we have a final in which there's a CCL berth at stake, a trophy, over $1 million in prize money. Yeah, and there's been sort of an awkward gap here between the semifinals and the final, but the upshot of that is both teams are going to be rested in what should be a very compelling final. I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, let's be honest. Once we stop broadcasting from a Fox perspective, the tournament's pretty much over. Okay, so this is this is a little coda, a little thing for the folks out there to watch. With regards to that, thank you so much. It's very, very kind. It means a tremendous amount that you would acknowledge that, especially because as a writer and a phenomenal writer of many of these things, that. And I've done these over the years, and you don't want to get too heady and you don't want to get too big and grandiose, but I did want to acknowledge that this was whether you follow MLS or not, this was a piece of sporting history, and from a soccer perspective, a piece of our soccer history that, while in the moment is what it is, I think over time is going to be looked on, and that's why I use the Brigadoon reference of this magical and mysterious type of month that provided us all of these memories, and some very, very surreal and some very, very raw and different types of images on and off the field. And I guess there was something for everybody if you did tune in. And a lot of people did. It was, as we said from the start, it was not perfect. It wasn't even fair, but that was not anything that unfortunately people were going to ever get or should expect in these strange time. It was, as we say time and time again, making the best of a incredibly crap and difficult type of situation. And that will only continue. I think when I look at teams and maybe individuals that are coming out of this tournament better, because we talked about the bubble phenomenon and how much of this is going to play going forward, and how much credit and credence should we put on these teams and players. Oscar Pereira, coach for Orlando, I think is smelling like a rose, as he should, because in a very short time he has made us notice and made us cautiously optimistic that this could continue outside the bubble with what Orlando is, and that's no small feat given their history of futility. So Oscar Pereira continues to impress as an MLS coach. Giovanni Savarese on the other side, also with, I think, a better collection of players, but still you got to get to a final, and everybody was adjusting in this. There was no precedent, like I said, so everybody had to adjust. I think, he's going to come out of it. We talked about, teams like Minnesota. We talked about San Jose and whether that type of thing continues. It's been fun to see. And now immediately we turn around and we start to judge these teams and players. And some of them will be in the context of what they did in the bubble. So if Orlando goes out and is a completely a shell of their former self in what they gave us in the bubble, that's a problem. If San Jose, who was great in the bubble, albeit in a very chaotic type of way, can't translate that beautiful chaos on a continual weekly basis, that's going to be problematic. All right, Mosse, that's much more big picture on the outside, but there is a game to be played. There is as you mentioned, a trophy to be won. That money shot, the confetti. I hope they have a stage and confetti. They damn well better have that. There, as you said, money to be won. And look, you get to play in Champions League, a direct route and path to Champions League. And for someone like Orlando, which we know hasn't even come close to doing any of these things, let alone being in the playoffs, this is rarefied air for this team. My money is still on Portland, which definitely means Orlando's winning like 4-0. But I think that they are a better team. I think that from an attacking perspective with Blanco, even with Valeri starting, which I'm not sure that's going to last, but at least at this point, I think that makes them a better team. I think they have the skill and the tools to not tear Orlando apart, but to deal with what Orlando brings, which is a lot of different things, including a revitalized, I guess, Nani, who is just being really, really good for Orlando. But I think ultimately this is Portland's to lose, as they say. What about you, Mosse? What do you say?
I would lean Portland, but I do want to say it's rare in a tournament like this that you end up with the two best teams in the final, and I believe these have been the two best teams over the course of this tournament, and the two best players going to head-to-head, because I would say Blanco and Nani have clearly been the two best players. And it's going to be fascinating. I suspect Orlando will have more of the ball. Oscar Pareja has turned them into a very good possession team, while Portland, we've seen them do it both ways throughout this tournament. They're happy sitting back. They've had games where they had 30-something% possession and just hit teams on the counter. And then they've also had games where they were on the front foot, and they can do that with Blanco and Valeri and the emergence of Eric Williamson. But in this game, I think they'll probably sit back a little bit. And the Valeri thing is absolutely fascinating to me because him starting pushes Blanco out to the left wing where, in my opinion, he's a little bit less effective. So I'd actually like to see Blanco start as at number 10 behind Abobasi and save Valeri as that super sub. You also have Niezgoda as a super sub as well. So I think that gives you two weapons to bring on in the second half to really change the game. So I would prefer if he did it that way. But you from what you can gather, Valeri is probably going to start this game.
I mean, he started the last game, and I just think at this point, this is a title game. This is for everything, and I think you need all guns blazing. And I don't think that Diego Valeri has yet wrapped his mind around being that substitute, and that's much more of maybe a long-term type of process. And so I don't think you keep powder dry here. And he was very good. I was worried that in the last game, now starting, it would be problematic, but he didn't miss a beat, nor should he, because he's got plenty of talent. Now, are you of the opinion that someone like Diego Rossi from LAFC, who is at this point at the top of the goal scoring leaderboard, but his team obviously went out, he can't possibly win an MVP of a tournament because of when he went out?
Yeah, I would say he gets my bronze ball. I would make it, if whoever wins this final, and if one of Nani or Blanco has a great game, they get the player of the tournament. The other one gets the silver ball, if you will, and then Diego Rossi would be my bronze ball. That's how I would play it. Yeah, I think you get knocked out in the quarterfinals. Well, two other guys that have also had great tournaments, they get all the way to the final. I think you have to give it to one of them.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing, well, it depends on what side you are, but the worst thing for everybody but LAFC people is that LAFC went out, and the way that they went out, and the fire that will have ignited in Bob Bradley and company to do things in whatever this regular season ends up looking at, and to be there at the real end of this season, and to say, and then they'll poo-poo the bubble and they'll say it doesn't really count and nobody really cares. In the same way that sometimes they like to stand on the supporters shield, and then and then when somebody wins MLS Cup, you poo-poo the supporters shield in the regular season. But they will have something to say when this is all said and done. And by the way, Carlos Vela will be back in the fold. Mosse, anything else on this game or on this tournament?
No, that's it.
All right, so let's put a bow on that. We will reference it back. Like I said, it'll become part of the history and part of the folklore, and we will reference things for years to come right now. And people will say, "Hey, remember in the bubble when this happened?" Or "Remember in the bubble on or off the field when these things happen?" And now, by the way, it should be said that we do have a template, and we do have, let's be honest, a case study as to what can work, because after the initial problems and everything got sorted out and the protocols were in place, the reality is that the players and the teams and the staff were in a much safer environment than probably what they are all going back to right now, because of that bubble type of mentality. So congratulations to everybody. I've mentioned many times all the men and women from a league perspective that worked so hard to put that together. And also, and I know they don't get a lot of credit or kudos, but to the referees, the men and women in that crew that went down, left their families, took whatever risks and sacrifices that anybody else was taking going down into that bubble, left their jobs, certainly aren't getting the attention or the money that the players get, and did their jobs and did it very, very well on a consistent basis. So well done. However, saying all of that, MLS and certainly American soccer, we don't rest on our laurels. We give ourselves a little pat on the back and then we move on, because there's plenty of other challenges to come. And that challenge, as we said, is right around the corner. So MLS's back is done. And now we're not calling it anything other than the return of the MLS regular season. But what it amounts to is the return of play in home markets. And it starts, as I said, on Wednesday with Nashville and Dallas. Okay, the two teams that were, as we said, jettisoned from the MLS's back tournament, trying to make up these games. And there are games in home markets. Again, I was on this call with Don Garber, where question after question after question was being asked, and people would just change words or phrasing here, But it came down to this. Why? Why are you doing this in home markets? And we come to find out that there is the potential for these home markets, if it is allowed by the local or state authorities from a law or restriction perspective, to have crowds and to have fans in the stands, which we know has not been anything that we have seen yet. MLS is allowing that to happen. Now, we come to find out there's only 2 or 3 teams right now that are even considering this. And you talk about Dallas, you talk about Real Salt Lake, and you talk about Sporting KC. And it's a very small number. We're talking 2,500 to 5,000. Obviously, the protocols are where, and the devil is in the details. The league has to approve all of these things. But we not only are going to see the return to home markets of Major League Soccer and have a Major League Soccer games, but in some of those markets, and a few of them, we are actually going to see crowds in the stands. And that was, a real bone of contention when Commissioner Garber was talking about this. And, he time and time again referenced the bubble and all that they had learned about the protocols and what is necessary, the individual and collective responsibility that is necessary. But he also acknowledged that just like the bubble, there are going to be problems and there are going to be challenges, and ones that they can anticipate and ones that they can't. And that this is a fluid type of situation. We all know the business realities behind getting back to play, especially when it comes to professional sports, and the necessity. I guess it's not even to make money now; it's to limit the loss of that they are going to incur this year. But look, we've announced our Fox broadcast slate for the next couple of months. And it should be noted that they only gave teams their next 6 or so games, and because this is fluid and this can change as we go on. We're starting out with a Classico, so LAFC and the Los Angeles Galaxy on Big Fox, right, Mosse? Is that what we have?
You said Classico. Are you off the Trafico thing, or are you?
Did I say? Oh, really? Bob Bradley is just, he's infiltrated my mind. No, it is El Trafico, okay? And it is on Big Fox, and it is LAFC versus the Galaxy. That's how we will be kicking off we need to call this something. I know it's kind of boring, just the return to regular season. We need some sort of name. So come up with a name out there. All right. Anyway, Mosse, what were your initial impressions when this was announced?
Yeah, so just to go over some of the details, as you mentioned, all the teams besides Dallas and Nashville will play 18 regular season games divided into different phases, and they've announced the first phase, which is 6 games, 3 home, 3 away, mostly regional matchups to cut down on the travel, a lot of rivalry games, as you mentioned. Our first 2, August 22nd, is the El Trafico LAFC LA Galaxy, and then the next day we have Portland Seattle, so not too shabby there either. Dallas and Nashville do have these 3 games to make up because they didn't play in the MLS's back group stage. And so they're going to play, as you mentioned, the first of those right off the bat here, Wednesday, August 12th. I believe the other one will be August 16th, and then one announced at a later date. Mm-hmm. They're still trying to figure out what to do with the Canadian teams because of the travel restrictions between Canada and the United States right now. So they're not involved in this first phase of games. They're going to be announcing the next phase of the schedule sometime in September, and presumably the Canadian teams will enter the mix then. I even saw a report in the last couple of days that Toronto might play their matches at Red Bull Arena. Listen, you mentioned this before, and I'm going to echo it here. I know you're walking a political minefield when you talk about these things, but there has been an overly fatalistic tone to some of the coverage about all these different sports looking to get back into play. And now people are saying, well, a bubble is one thing, but home markets are completely different. Yeah, well, I heard a lot of doom and gloom about the bubble too, especially after those first couple of days when Dallas and Nashville dropped out. I heard a lot of, this isn't going to last and this is going to be canceled any day now. And they worked through the problems and they got the tournament completed there was 1 game left, and it's been overall a success. Listen, Don Garber, as you mentioned, he's come out and said it's not going to be perfect. Players probably are going to test positive. We probably are going to have to postpone games. We have contingency plans in place for all that. And ultimately, if it doesn't work, we'll cancel the season. But we at least want to try, and I'm okay with that. So I don't know why there's such negativity surrounding this. I think it's at least worth seeing how it goes.
Well, you know why, Mosse. You're a big boy. You've been around long enough. If it bleeds, it leads. I mean, that's no. I mean, it's human nature. It's much more attractive of a story to criticize. It's much more attractive of a story to, like you said, be fatalistic, or to be talking about worst case scenarios. And disasters or problems. And as I said, look, I don't think that anybody wants that to happen, but there is a human element when you write something like that, or when you report something like that, or even when you think something like that and express it, you say, I don't want, believe me, I'm happy to be proven wrong. But there's a human element that you want to be acknowledged and proven right in what you're talking about. And like I said, it doesn't mean that anybody wants anybody to get hurt or anything to go south or poorly. But when you write these types of things, and I'm not, once again, write whatever you want. I don't care. Write whatever you want. But when it comes to this, like you said. There is now a precedent, and there is now and I know it's different. I know the Orlando bubble is different, but these people are working day and night to make sure that it is as safe as possible. Is it 100% foolproof? No, it's not. And guess what? Nothing is in life. Now, you mentioned the Canadian teams, which, being a league that operates in two countries, especially in this moment in time, makes it difficult. You mentioned also the potential for Toronto to play their home games in the U.S., and there's even reports out that they would be playing at the Red Bull Arena, which is also where NYCFC is playing. So you'd have a triple type of, I don't know if it would be a bubble, but at least three teams playing in one place. And once again, just making the best, because Yankee Stadium isn't going to be available, and so NYCFC has to adjust. Toronto, because of the fact that they're in Canada, may have to adjust and may have to, make their home, at least on game days, in another place. They should play as the Metro Stars. Come back as the Metro Stars, or something like that. The Toronto Metro Stars. That would be an homage back to this. The other part of this is that, from a broadcasting standpoint, some of these, like you said, are going to be nationally broadcast. Some of them are going to involve regional broadcasts. Everybody's going to now get involved. And I think it'll be really interesting to juxtapose how, because now we have a idea of what an MLS game looks like, but it's all relative to what's happened over the last month in Orlando, and how much of that translates when we talk about the virtual offerings that we have, and the signage that we have, and the LEDs and the enhanced audio and all of that, and how much of that now continues on. From a Fox perspective, look, we're going to continue to pump in the noise, or at least have people given the option of pumping in the noise. But now you're in multiple different venues, and all of the different challenges that come with broadcasting games in other places. Now, we've done them at all these different places, but once again, this will be the first time that we are seeing these environments now playing a game after we started lockdown and the pandemic started, and those games before. Do you think, Mosse, when it comes to MLS teams right now, who do you think is best positioned right now to translate their success in the bubble to the regular season?
I don't know if they're best positioned, but I absolutely think Orlando are for real. This is not like a Greece 2004 where they're just getting all these lucky breaks and smash and grab victories. They're playing like genuinely good soccer. They have a plan. As I said, Oscar Pereira has turned this into a very good possession team. So I see no reason why what they're doing in this bubble wouldn't translate. So for sure, they're a team I have my eye on. And then, although they got knocked out by Orlando, I mean, LAFC, I can't wait to watch them play again, because they're just so entertaining. So yeah, I mean, it's, and just to add a few things. So players are going to be tested regularly, and they're going to be mostly flying charter flights. Mm-hmm. And the idea is for away games is to arrive and leave on the same day as the game. So, and if all goes well, the regular season would end November 8th. Playoffs would start November 20th, and MLS Cup would be December 12th. And it is an expanded playoff field with 18 teams. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see how this goes. I'm very curious to see how everything.
All right, well, let's finish up, this MLS segment here. There is news. The business of soccer continues to go on. You mentioned, Inter Miami and what that is or isn't at this point. Now we come to find out that Matuidi is possibly going from Inter to Inter Miami. Is this a good move? Keep in mind, this is Inter Miami. This is, let's be honest, this is David Beckham's Inter Miami. On course for a legendary and historically poor start when it comes to MLS teams and certainly expansion teams, in that they haven't gotten a win yet. But the expectations when it comes to the team in Miami, and when I say Miami, I mean the team that's playing in Fort Lauderdale, and hopefully in the future in Miami. Is this the type of signing that should be celebrated and expected when it comes to what David Beckham's Inter Miami is, in your mind?
It's an interesting one because the plan with Inter Miami seems to be to mostly sign younger Latin American players while keeping the powder dry for those one or two big, sexy international signings. And this sort of doesn't fit into either. It's sort of right in between. It's a veteran European player, but who's not a move the needle guy, Blaise Matuidi. But he's certainly a good player. He's had a very good career, PSG, Juventus now. So, yeah, I mean, if he's in good shape, fitness wise, I mean, he'll help for sure. He makes them a better team. But yeah, as you mentioned, it's not a move the needle guy, and he's going to be taking up one of their DP spots, it sounds like. So it's an interesting route that they went here.
He's not selling any tickets, but it could be a good soccer move, and it might only be the start of some other moves as they go forward. We talk so much about the soft launch approach of teams that come into the league, and I think I've talked about this before, that I don't think that Inter Miami can afford to soft launch this, even though they're not yet in their full stadium. I mean, this is Miami, and with all due respect, it's not Minnesota. This is a big market, and a market with a lot of attention, and once again, with an ownership in the likes of David Beckham that begs for big things to be done. And the expectation all along was that big things were going to be done. And, the pandemic came and kind of threw everything out of whack and shut things down. But now that, the pandemic's not done, but at least we are moving forward. Now that expectation is going to continue to ramp up. And I know there's not necessarily crowds that are going to be buying tickets to see that, but there are going to be people that are going to be tuning in, are going to expect David Beckham's Inter Miami to give them something to scream and yell about. There will be others that will be tuning in, including us. We will be following it closely as MLS comes back online in all of these home markets. We are keeping our fingers crossed. We are knocking on wood. We are praying to the soccer gods that everybody continues to be safe and healthy when it comes to not just Major League Soccer coming back online, because there's other leagues and there's other sports that are contemplating coming back online in home markets and in different ways, and with the inherent risk that exists for these types of things. Mosse, anything else on this MLS topic before we move on?
That's it.
Okay. When we come back, UEFA Champions League. All right, yeah, we have our World Wrap coming up next, so all sorts of stuff going on when it comes to moves on the field and moves off the field when it comes to Champions League, and some very big names and some big teams. We will be discussing that when we come back in a little bit here. All right, moving on. Okay, welcome back. We're going to do our little world wrap-up here, and we're going to focus in on the Champions League, which has returned in the form of these second legs that had yet to be played when the pandemic hit. And so a couple of them had to be played in order to get down to the final group of 8 that then will go in this next week to the And once again, we need a good name for the Portugal bubble, but the Portugal bubble is what we're going to call it. That is going to house the, what's left of this Champions League. All right, Mosse, so much to talk about, and so much happened. What do you want to start with first? Should we talk Juventus?
Sure.
All right. I guess my first question to you is, was this surprising that Juventus went out?
Mildly, but if you had watched them play the last few weeks, it wasn't a shocker. And I will say, I do think they got burned in terms of the officiating. And I heard a lot of people say, well, the two penalties cancel out. They do not cancel out. An away goal and a home goal do not cancel out. If you had wiped those two plays away, it would have been 1-0 after 90 minutes and would have gone to extra time. Instead, a 2-1 Juventus win, they get knocked out. So they do have a right to gripe. That was just almost surreal that after reviewing that on VAR, they would still uphold that penalty on the Bentancur foul on Aouar. I mean, that's one of the worst refereeing decisions I've seen in a long time. The other one, the Depay one, I wouldn't have given it either. But as we've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast, nobody understands the handball rule. And you're sort of entering this gray area interpretation where you see those called sometimes. I don't like it, but I can live with that. The other one was way more egregious to me, and the more costly one because it was an away goal.
Oh, Mosse, you are such a Juventus apologist, and it's disgusting the way that you shift blame, and you won't just look at, well, not yourself, because I don't think that you played, but look at Juventus and what they did, even put themselves in that position.
And against man Licker isn't going to be happy, or Lyon fan who.
Yeah, I know, right? Come on. I mean, against inferior opposition, you are Juventus. Look, the narrative going in and ultimately going out was Juventus is expected to win Serie A each and every year, regardless if, Sarri or you or Alex Dowd is at the helm. Okay. So that's not anything at this point anymore to be excited about or to be celebrated. All right. Because it is such an expectation in that the only thing that really matters, either from a player, an introduction of a player or an introduction of a coach to Juventus, is getting them to Champions League and ultimately finding a way to win Champions League. Have I framed that correctly in terms of what the general view is right now in 2020 of Juventus?
Absolutely. And they now have a manager who has the same coaching experience as myself or Alex Dowd.
All right. All right. So they bomb out of this tournament. And, the fact that they won, Serie A and the Scudetto again means nothing. And so they recognize that somebody has to go and you can't fire the whole team. And so they fire the coach. And, they fire a coach with, incredible history and impeccable credentials and plenty of experience, shall we say. And, and then they hire Andrea Pirlo, a legendary player. 10 days ago, if my math is correct, he was installed as the Juventus under-23 youth coach, has yet to coach an actual game for that team, and now finds himself picking up the phone and saying, hey, listen, about that under-23 job, that's all fine and well, but we need you to kind of step into the breach here and take over the full team. How do you think that this ultimately played out behind the scenes, Mosse? I'm asking you to put yourself back there and see how this happened.
Well, first on Sarri, Juventus have two overriding concerns right now. One is to win the Champions League, and the other is they very much want to sexy up their brand. Mm-hmm. And in bringing in a coach like Sarri, he doesn't have any Champions League winning pedigree, but he did have this reputation from his work at Napoli as a guy that you bring in and you're going to play expansive, attractive football. And so he needed to achieve one of two things this season. Obviously win the Champions League, but short of that, at least if he had gotten Juventus playing really exciting football, they perhaps could have excused it. And he didn't. They actually were a pretty dour team to watch this season, and they crash out in the round of 16. So it doesn't surprise me at all that he's gone. Some people were surprised by how quickly this all unfolded. I think this speaks to this nutty calendar we're operating in 2020, where there's much less time between this season and next. And so if you're going to make a coaching change, you can't dither around too long. You kind of have to make it right at the end of one season to give the next guy a chance to step in and have a proper preseason.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is miffed at the coaching change. Like that's normal. That could happen, and maybe it should happen given what we talked about earlier. I don't think anybody is crying over the fact that Sarri's no longer there, except for my friend Roberto Martinez gave a loving tribute
in a second.
and said he needed more time. I think it's much more about Pirlo coming in and replacing him. That's where the angst is.
Which, listen, we've talked about this many times on the podcast. There is very much an ex-player fetish now. Mm-hmm. And when I say ex-player fetish, I mean, it's this notion that if you were a cerebral player and a charismatic leader and you understand the culture of a club from having played in it, that's all going to translate to coaching. And those things give you the credentials to step in and be the coach, even without the greatest coaching resume. And, there have been two mammoth success stories in the last decade of Pep Guardiola and Zinedine Zidane. And so Juventus have come out and said, we hope that Pirlo is the next Pep or Zidane. They're pretty upfront about the fact that that's what they're envisioning. 3 of the top 6 in 3 of the big 6 in England right now have kind of gone that route with Lampard, Arteta, and Solskjaer. But the interesting thing is, if you go through all of these examples, Pep coached Barcelona B for one season. Zidane was an assistant to Ancelotti at Real Madrid and then coached the Castilla team briefly. Arteta was an assistant under Pep. Solskjaer coached smaller clubs in Norway. Frank Lampard coached Derby County, and on you go. And so it might not seem like much, but there was at least some bleeding in there and something to kind of, prepare them. And Juventus clearly had that in mind too, because as you mentioned, they initially appointed Pirlo as the under-23 coach. So they felt like he needed a bit of an intermediary step first. And it's just amazing that in the span of a few days, as you mentioned, they thought about it and said, the heck with that. Let's just go straight to giving him. So, I guess it's sort of the natural conclusion to this direction we've sort of been drifting in anyway with these ex-players. And up to now, there was a thought that, okay, even though the main reason you're giving him the job is because who they were as players, they still need a little something coaching-wise on the resume to justify it. And Juventus have now taken it that extra step of, no, they don't. We were convinced by what he was as a player that it's all going to translate and he's going to make for a good coach. Another example is Xavi is clearly ticketed for the Barcelona job, but he felt like he had to go to Qatar and coach there for a little bit. And he's talked about how he only wants to get to Barcelona when he's quote unquote ready. So up to now, there had been this notion that to go from nothing to one of these big clubs is a little too much of a step. And you do need an intermediary step first. And with Pirlo and Juventus, they're skipping that and just giving him the job. So it's going to be fascinating to see how it goes.
All right. So Andrea Pirlo gets named as the new head coach of Juventus, and everyone's head explodes. The angst levels are at historic proportions. Here's the way I see this, okay? And I've said this before. Life isn't fair and soccer isn't fair, okay? Now, sports and soccer are oftentimes fairer than life, but they're still not fair. Sports oftentimes are not a meritocracy. It's not what you have done. It's not necessarily, the CV that you have. Okay, as you mentioned, Landon Donovan is more qualified to coach Juventus than Andrea Pirlo in terms of experience. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Pirlo can't come in and be the best thing since sliced bread and be the perfect fit for Juventus. Don't think for a second that knives are not going to be out, either very overtly or behind the scenes. And don't think for a second that there aren't coaches that would have killed or died for the opportunity to coach Juventus, even with the pressure of basically win or get to a Champions League final. There are plenty of people out there that would have had the appropriate experience and incredible resume that nobody would have batted an eyelid if they had been named. Ultimately, This is about them relying and having faith that somebody who has been around and understands how Juventus functions as a club, that type of inherent understanding has seeped into what they are. Now, you mentioned some of the likes of Zidane and Pep, who, while they had a little bit more experience, for the most part, they were given the keys to a Ferrari and they didn't miss a beat and were able to not just drive it, but even drive it better than others in the past. But they are the aberration, okay? They are the absolute anomaly when you look at the amount of quote unquote big time players that have then had to actually get into a position where they are explaining it. And it doesn't matter how much inherent knowledge and understanding that Pirlo has about Juventus. If he can't go into that locker room and explain what he wants done, and yes, he was a quote unquote cerebral player, whatever the hell that means, okay? He was a good player, okay? And it doesn't, if somebody was a really physical player, and therefore I guess you imply that he wasn't cerebral and that he didn't use his or her head, that doesn't preclude them from being good coaches. Regardless, Pirlo has to come into the locker room and be able to explain to these players what he wants to do, all right? And not just say, well, I did it this way. And just like any player, being able to explain it is very different than being able to actually do it. And that he's coming in without that bag of tricks and those tools that you acquire over time puts him at a disadvantage. Doesn't mean that it can't work. And all of these players, by the way, that are now coaches, they were given not just the benefit of the doubt, but they were given, like, as I said, the keys to Ferraris. I mean, look, this is Juventus still. Okay. And if this is your first gig, try your first gig being a mid-level team that's trying to stave off relegation or something like that, where you don't have the players to even come close to doing what you necessarily want. And you have to coach them up, and you don't have that coaching experience. That, for me, that's where real coaches and real managers show themselves. And I'm not discounting the importance of being able to manage and coach the elites. And those guys that we've talked about have found a way in very rarefied air to be able to have success. But I think this is going to be fascinating to see. I think it's a crash and burn type of thing on one sense, or incredibly successful. I think it's hard for anything to be in between, and he will have to learn on the job. And this isn't just giving the keys to the Ferrari to someone. It's giving it to a teenager, basically. And we know that teenagers are morons and can be morons.
Last thing for me on this, and then we can move
on.
He's taking over Juventus at an interesting time. Juventus have won 9 Serie A titles in a row, but this past season they finished 1 point above Inter. Now, to be fair, this was almost like, a basketball team that's down 10 with a minute left and then hits a couple 3-pointers to dress up the final score. It wasn't as close as it looked. I mean, people are going to look at that years from now and think that this was some epic title race between Juventus and Inter. Inter weren't really a factor in the title race the last few weeks, but Juventus, once they saw they were going to win it, they kind of switched off. They lost some games. Inter finished strong, and so it ends up being a 1-point gap. But I do think Inter are coming with Antonio Conte. He's got this, self-destructive thing, Antonio Conte. He's in a great situation now, and instead of being happy about it, he keeps picking fights with Inter's management. So maybe the whole thing will self-combust there. But if Antonio Conte can sort of, resist blowing this thing up on his own, I think Inter are headed in the right direction. With the right moves, this offseason could potentially challenge Juventus next season. So Pirlo's entering a situation where not only is there's pressure to, like I said, sexy up the brand and get Juventus to play attractive football and obviously to win the Champions League, but I'm not sure Serie A is such a foregone conclusion either. He might be going into a season here where he's going to be in a dogfight with Inter for the domestic title. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does.
What'd you think of Cristiano Ronaldo's reaction? The tantrum and the crying post game. There are a lot of different takes on that. One side is, that shows the true competitor and the fire that burns with him, even at this age and after all the success and all the money and all the fame, he's still ultimately at his core is somebody that wants to win. And then there's others that say, what a baby. I want to get your thoughts first, and then I'll give you mine.
I don't have an issue with it. I guess I go more with the first thing you said. It shows his passion. I will say it's an amazing stat. In his 2 seasons with Juventus, they've played 6 Champions League knockout games and scored 7 goals, and he scored all 7 of them. Nobody has scored a Champions League knockout goal in those 2 seasons besides him. So, he's done his part. And even in this game, he scored both their goals, and it just hasn't gotten the help around him. And this could segue nicely to the next game we want to talk about, but it's been 2 years since that Ronaldo Real Madrid divorce, and both Juventus and both Ronaldo and Real Madrid getting knocked out on the same day made people sort of take a step back and reflect on that again and say, boy, this hasn't really played out great for either side, because they used to be, winning Champions League titles no problem when they were together, and now since they've split apart, neither one has been able to win it.
All right, well, let me just finish it with this then. When it comes to the tantrum and the crying and the whining of losing for Ronaldo, it did not endear me to him. I love Cristiano Ronaldo, but I cringed at that. And part of it is, I will freely admit that I can't relate to that. Maybe, it's because of where I come from and where I grew up. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't that I wasn't competitive or I didn't want to win, but maybe I brought much more perspective on what the game was and what the game wasn't, even in that moment. And what it does tell me is that I think, look, he's not going to have a problem from a lifestyle standpoint, because he's never going, to want for anything because of the amount of money that he's made. But I think once the game is gone for Cristiano Ronaldo, I think it's going to be hard for him, very, very hard for him. And I think he will be left trying to chase that feeling that obviously burns within him as a player. And maybe I'm reading too much into it and psychoanalyzing him for that moment. But it like I said, if I'm a teammate, that doesn't instill me with confidence. And like I said, it doesn't endear me to him. I don't look at it as that's the fire and the core that makes him, arguably one of the greatest players ever to, not arguably the greatest player ever to play the game. All right, but who knows? He could have just been having a bad day. All right, what's next, Mosse?
Well, so that same day, Manchester City beat Real Madrid 2-1 to complete a 4-2 aggregate triumph. Rafael Varane had,
had a day. Speaking of a bad day, yeah.
You as a center back must have cringed when we watched that. A couple of big picture things here. I think this had to feel good for Pep because Zidane, there's been a lot of buzz the last couple of weeks after winning La Liga with Real Madrid that, we talk so much about Klopp and Pep and why isn't Zidane considered the best manager in the world? And Zidane has sort of been pushed up alongside those two. And for Pep to kind of knock him out here and outfox him in both games, I think, was a nice little sort of flex the muscles moment for Pep to kind of remind everybody of what a great manager he is. The other thing, are you ready for a little bit of a Mosse rant here? Yes. I love it. And I love that you are prefacing it and everything. All right. So let me get comfortable here. All right. Lay it on me. I consider myself an Eden Hazard fan. He's been one of the great players in world football for the last decade. But I don't know if it's because he's accrued so much goodwill or people haven't paid close enough attention to it, but he has not gotten as much grief as you would expect for a debut season with Real Madrid that was an abject catastrophe. He showed up overweight. He missed loads of time with injuries. And when he played, he looked slow and lethargic. Eden Hazard, who cost 100 million euros, finishes this season with 1 goal in 22 games in all competitions. He did finish with 7 assists, which I know looks respectable, but I got to say that is a quiet 7 assists from somebody who watched Real Madrid play all season. I did a double take when I saw that number because that does not jive with the eye test. He was never like a creative force this season at all. And he saved the worst for last. He was absolutely dreadful in this game. It was like they were playing with 10 players. I can't believe Zidane left him on the field for 80 minutes. And I didn't see this, but my dad told me that Roberto Martinez said on the CBS pregame that the reason Real Madrid won La Liga was because of how well Eden Hazard played after the restart. That is preposterous. That is up there with Thomas Rongen saying Atalanta struggled after the restart. Eden Hazard started Real Madrid's first couple of games after the restart, played pretty well, had assists in each game. I even came on this pod and said, hey, it's a new lease on life for him. And if he finishes the season strong and propels him to the La Liga title, he could change the narrative about the season. So the stage was set for the thing that Roberto Martinez said happened to have happened, but it didn't. He then got injured shortly thereafter, missed a bunch of games, and was a non-factor down the stretch. So that was. And listen, if Roberto Martinez did say that, that is the one dark cloud in a clear sky for CBS, because it was an incredible start for them. All credit. It was top-notch. They did a phenomenal job covering these games. But that one bothered me a little bit because, you either got to be the Belgium coach or an analyst. And when you're an analyst, you got to take the Belgium hat off and not use that platform to blow smoke up the ass of a guy who, let's be honest, had a disastrous season and isn't deserving of any praise right now. So that's my.
All right. So what I hear is that you're angry that the mob has not come for Eden Hazard in the way that let's say they came for James. So I mean, is he bordering on James territory?
Well, what's interesting to me is we've focused so much on the Barcelona flops the last couple of years: Coutinho, Dembele, Griezmann, and to me, Hazard is been even worse than any of those guys were, and yet he hasn't. I don't know, for whatever reason. Maybe people are aware of how bad he's been and they're talking about it, but I just haven't heard it. So I don't know. To me, it feels like it's something that sort of has gotten lost in the ether of just how bad a season Eden Hazard had.
Are you buying? Because I know over the years we've talked about Zinedine Zidane and how even though he might not get the attention and he's certainly not as big and bold as others, he certainly backed it up with results. But are you on this new trend or train right now to say that he is starting to show cracks and maybe starting to show his true colors as to what he is, or maybe more importantly, what he isn't?
No, this was his first time getting eliminated from the Champions League. And to be fair, Manchester City are the better team. Mm-hmm. And I think Zidane did well to win La Liga this season. So no, I don't think anything like that. I do think he coached a poor game here. It was a questionable decision to start Hazard because he wasn't completely fit. He was coming back from an injury. And then, look, I know I'm going to come off as biased here as a Brazilian, but he wasn't giving you anything. And when he brings Asensio on in the 60-minute mark, the move was to take out Hazard there. Instead, he took out Rodrigo. And one of the things I admire about Zidane is he has that strong personality to take out the star. And that was a rare instance of him maybe, taking the easy way out. It's easier to take the Brazilian teenager out than the 100 million euro signing. And so I get, he trusted pedigree there. And then, he leaves Vinicius on the bench the entire game, which nobody's been able to figure that out. The Madrid media was stunned by that, and loads of articles written the last few days of people trying to make sense out of that. That was bizarre. I mean, they looked flat in the second half. That was a game that was screaming out for a guy to bring some energy and to try to make something happen. And you
mean like a Bale?
Yeah, I mean that's a whole other conversation. But
but it's part of the assessment, isn't it? I mean, if he, like, I appreciate that you appreciate when they can stand up and they're willing to make difficult choices, but at the expense of the team doing well. I mean, yes, it's Real Madrid, but you still have to have all guns blazing, and you want all guns blazing, especially like you said against a very good team like Manchester City.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Bale asked out of this game.
Okay, but isn't it part?
That there's been, in his defense, there's been an environment created there where he knew he wasn't going to play and didn't want to be a distraction.
But isn't it part of leadership and part of managing to be able to to calm somebody or to ingratiate them in, or understanding how and when to put your arm around them or to kick them? And I don't know. I don't know. I'm not saying that he's not a good coach.
I'll end on this. For all the issues I have with Gareth Bale, he couldn't have been any worse than Hazard in that game. So I'll leave it at that.
That's true. All right. So we have our matchups now, and it should be said, I mean, it wasn't even a question. Bayern Munich came and rolled against Chelsea. It wasn't even a question. No Christian Pulisic. He has been injured. Right now, they're saying 3 to 6 weeks he's out, which means he could be out at the beginning of the season and the return of the season. We talked about this last week. It's just, unfortunately, another in a long line of injuries, some more serious than others. But, the quicker he gets back, the better it is for him and for Chelsea. And he will be coming into a Chelsea that will have more competition for places. And I'm actually looking forward to what Chelsea looks like going forward. But we do have our final matchups here. Mosse, what is appetizing to you other than Barcelona Bayern Munich?
Well, yeah, that is the glamour matchup of the quarterfinals. This PSG Atalanta game is interesting, although I'm wondering what kind of team PSG is going to be able to put out for this game, because Di Maria is suspended, and now you're hearing Mbappe and Verratti both probably out. So this was already going to be a tall order given the fact that they've only played 2 competitive matches since March, while Atalanta have been playing in Serie A and are such a good team. And now you add in the fact that PSG likely going to be out without 3 of their 5 best players. I hope people take all this into account when they analyze this match and analyze it with some nuance, rather than just, if PSG get knocked out, it's because Neymar bottled it and he's a choker, and PSG are a bunch of chokers, because the circumstances have really conspired against him here. Although, to be fair, Atalanta also have a big miss in Ilicic, who's dealing with some personal problems, which I won't get into. You can Google it and see, it's a marital situation. But it looks like he's gonna miss this game too. So that's a big miss for Atalanta. But still, I favor Atalanta in this one, I think.
Yeah. So tell me who goes through. Atalanta, PSG. You still favor Atalanta?
I favor Atalanta, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take PSG. Okay.
And that's the first game, August 12th. Then we can take them in order. The next day is Atletico Madrid against Leipzig, which I said when the draw occurred that Atletico Madrid were the single biggest winners. Leipzig was the most desirable opponent. They didn't play that well after the restart. They haven't played a competitive match since June 27th. And now they're going to go into a game August 13th, having not played a competitive match since June 27th, which is crazy, 6 weeks. And they don't have Timo Werner. So I think, although, look, it's one game in an empty stadium, and Atletico aren't really built to stamp their authority on any match. So who the heck knows? But I would say Atletico are solid favorites. Atletico did deal in the last couple of days with this situation of having 2 players that tested positive for coronavirus. So they retested everybody. There was some concern that it might have spread. The good news is it didn't. Everybody else tested negative. The 2 players are Angel Correa and Versalco. And, not to be callous about it, but from a purely footballing perspective, Versalco is no loss at all. He hasn't played since March. He's a non-factor on that team. Correa is a bit of a loss. He's one of their more explosive players. He started over half their La Liga games this season, so he's a guy they'd like to have. So they're now in confinement. I think they stayed back in Madrid. And I don't know if they're out for this whole thing or if they could potentially get back for later games, but they're definitely out for the Leipzig match.
All right. So I agree with you that Atletico goes through.
Yep. And then the next one would be Bayern Barcelona, which, as you said, I mean, there was very little doubt Bayern were going to advance, but big point of interest was to see how they would look after a month layoff. Will there be any rust, or would they pick up where they left off? And it was a pick up where they left off scenario. They blew away Chelsea. Lewandowski, 2 goals, 2 assists. And so they're going to go to Lisbon now brimming with confidence, and I think are the favorites to knock out Barcelona, who did what they had to do against Napoli in that second leg. Weren't overly impressive. I think they did enough that they're feeling better about themselves, but still, and Messi scored a great goal in that game, and you could never discount a team with Messi. But Bayern are the better team here. One interesting subplot to this one is this battle of German goalkeepers. There's no love lost between Neuer and Ter Stegen. Ter Stegen, in my mind, has become the better of the 2 over the last couple of years. Neuer is still very good, but Ter Stegen to me is like top 3 goalkeeper in the world. but he hasn't gotten much of a sniff with Germany because Neuer is still number one. And so there's some friction there. Neuer is a guy who's very protective of his turf, both internationally speaking and at club level, where Bayern have signed Nubel, and Neuer has already let loose some quotes about like, well, he's not getting any playing time next season. I'm still here and I'm not going anywhere, kind of thing. So Neuer is very protective of his turf, and so he's coming up against a guy that's trying to take his job at the international level. So that's fascinating. I don't know. So I go Bayern here. Which way do you go?
I mean, I've been on that Bayern train. I mean, even well before. I just think that they're so good. But oh, man, yeah, I'll stick with Bayern. But real big part of me wants to say that this is where they get tripped up. They're a better team. Bayern's a better team right now than Barcelona.
And then finally, August 15th, the last of the quarterfinals is Manchester City-Lyon, which great respect to Lyon for what they've done and getting past Juventus. But
I hear a butt coming.
I'm trying to butter up liquor because you know what's coming here. I mean, this is City all the way. I mean, they should win this, no problem. And so that would set up, if it goes the way we just predicted, that would set up Atletico Madrid, Atalanta, and Bayern Munich, Manchester City in the semifinals. Remember, this all culminates. All these matches are in Lisbon. This all culminates August 23rd is the final.
So these quarterfinals happen all this week. The semifinals would happen at the beginning of next week.
Yeah, quarterfinals are the 12th through the 15th.
Okay.
And then the semifinals are the 18th and 19th. Okay. And the final is the 23rd.
It's the 23rd of Sunday? Is that 17? No.
That sounds right. Yeah.
All right. All right. So anyway, in the next couple of weeks, this will all be over.
Yeah. And I think Alex Dow does want us to whip through Europa League very quickly, which we can't really talk about these games too much because two of them are occurring today. We're taping this on a Monday morning, and two of them are tomorrow. So by the time most people listen to this podcast, these games will have been played. But for what it's worth, Europa League bubble is in Germany. So the two games today are Manchester United against Copenhagen, which is in Cologne, and then a great one, Inter against Leverkusen, which is in Dusseldorf. I can't wait to watch that game as soon as we're done taping. It starts very soon. And then tomorrow will be Shakhtar against Basel in Gelsenkirchen. And then the last one is Wolves Sevilla in Duisburg. And then the United Copenhagen winner faces the Sevilla Wolves winner. Inter Leverkusen winner faces Shakhtar Basel winner. This all culminates August 21st at the Rhein-Energie Stadion in Cologne. So, and it's a fun field, I got to say. I mean, you have the likes of United and Inter and Sevilla. And so there's some potential for some tasty matchups here and potentially a great final. We'll see how it all plays out.
All right. Anything else, Mosse?
That is it.
Okay. Let's move this along right now. When we come back, oh yeah, Ask Alexi. It's upon us. You know it. You love it. Well, at least you know it. You use that hashtag Ask Alexi, and we're going to read out some questions. All right. Moving on. All right. It's that time again. Time for Ask Alexi. You use that hashtag Ask Alexi, and you send us in your questions, comments, concern, or Ask Mosse over there on the social media platforms. And we pick a few each week, as we did this week. Mosse, what do the people want to know this week?
First up, it's not really a question, but @Les Porter wants us to comment on the fact that League One and League Two, those are the third and fourth divisions in England, have voted to introduce a salary cap.
Yes, League One and League Two, as you mentioned, which are the third and fourth. So interestingly named, but, you know, it's par for the course. Okay. So the salary cap is not anything new in concept, and certainly not anything new in concept when it comes to the way that we think about sports. It's part and parcel to most of our sports. And it is used for a number of different reasons, not the least of which is to create some semblance of parity. But it's also used to keep costs down. And it is looked upon in most places in the world, and a lot of the soccer leagues out there, is not something that people want. As is often the case nowadays, some of the stuff that people poo-poo or look down on when it comes to what we do, and I say we as American sports do, secretly, or now we're seeing not so secretly, there are those out there that would advocate for this, and if given the opportunity, would implement some of the things that we do. I think that this represents, well, first off, it represents the times and the recognition of doing things relative to the challenging times that we are living in, and maybe implementing some things that either secretly, as I said, or even very overtly, people have wanted to do, and finding that this may be the opportune moment to do something like this. It makes complete sense to me. It provides a level of responsibility and fiscal prudence that I think sometimes is lacking in sports. It also immediately, in my estimation, because of what I mentioned, the way that it creates a more level playing field and more parity, it immediately makes it that much more interesting, and in a game and in a world where things that was mentioned earlier in the pod aren't necessarily always fair, it makes it fairer, and therefore it gives us a better ability to assess teams and assess coaches in particular, and managers. And look, if this is something that enables teams to be more self-sufficient and teams to be more secure in a very insecure time and age, I think it's a positive. What do you think, Mosse?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you hear the word salary cap, when any kind of European football, it gets your hopes up, and imagining what that would look like maybe at the highest levels for those that are concerned about the super clubs and the gaps that have opened, and us living in this world where Bayern Munich have won 8 Bundesliga titles in a row and Juventus have won 9 Serie A titles in a row. But, I just think the Players Association is even pushing back against this, and they're mad that they weren't consulted, and they're saying this is unlawful and unenforceable, and they're going to try to fight this. And I just imagine if they ever tried to introduce this at the highest levels of the game, it'd be a non-starter. I mean, the super clubs just have so much power that they'd be able to fight against it. So, it's just, yeah, I mean, for people who do think that we should have a salary cap, you just hear it associated with any sort of level of European football, and it sort of gets you perked up a little bit. But it's a long way from this to, let's say, the Premier League or La Liga.
Okay, but to your point, okay, and you mentioned the players' union in this particular scenario. If you were to, and it's a big if, but if you were to get the super clubs to agree to something like this, would the pushback be from them that, look, we're going to lose that super club status because everybody else is going to be an equal playing field? Or would the pushback be bigger the way we're seeing right now from a player? And let's be honest, what's happening behind the players? It's the agents, in that you're deflating salaries and you're therefore limiting the amount of money that a player can make. It's probably a combination of both of those things. But ultimately, if ownership wants to do something that they feel is proper for their business, they're going to find a way to do it. And I know the agents and the players certainly have power, and in many places more power than other places. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. Although I do feel that the super club phenomenon is an important component of the entertainment and popularity of some of these leagues. And to lose that, I think you are shooting yourself in the foot. That phenomenon, whereas many people hate these teams because they win so much as love these teams, part of that is the structure of that business and what makes it so interesting. And I hesitate to say interesting and compelling, but there is an element of that. And I think the amount of people that complain about the fact that it's boring and the lack of parity are not, it's not as much as you actually think when it really gets down to it. So I don't know if, like to your point, I'm not sure that could be something that is going to be implemented. But I like the fact that they're thinking about it right now.
The Premier League made some news too. I have a few things to throw at you there.
Okay, all right.
So they have voted for next season to go back to the 3 subs, scrap the 5. So much to Sid Lowe's delight and much to your chagrin, I imagine.
Oh God, this is so Premier League. This is, yeah, prim, proper, authentic, genuine, whatever word that you want to use. So we know that the 5 substitutes came in because of the unique and challenging circumstances that we have right now. And we also know that IFAB enabled leagues to continue it for the next year. And we talked oftentimes on this pod about what may stick even beyond these challenging times. Yeah, I mean, I think it once again separates out English soccer, English football by design. And oftentimes they are the leaders in this space. But I think it puts them on that proverbial island that oftentimes they like to be on, but it would not surprise me in the least if there were those that were on the fence about doing it that will, because England did it, actually go the opposite way and say, all right, fine, England's going to do 3, we're going to do 5. And then you have a situation where people are playing different forms of the game.
The other thing they've done is they've decided they're going to conform to FIFA when it comes to VAR. FIFA want everybody to employ VAR the same way. The Premier League had chosen to go its own way in a few things, and now they're going to conform to the way FIFA wants everything done. And so what does that affect? That means that for all subjective decisions, they want the referee to run over to the monitor and make the decision himself. Previously, referees in the Premier League had been dissuaded from doing that. They wanted as often as possible for them to just trust the VAR officials upstairs because they didn't want to slow down the flow of the game. But now there's been a lot of complaining about that. We've talked about how players and managers, they'd rather have the referee on the field make the decision. And so now the Premier League, they are conforming to that. That's more often than not, you're going to see.
Oh, I feel so much better, Mosse. This is such pure theater and performance art. Our whole world nowadays is about theater and performance art. And look, I talk about performance all the time. But this isn't, this is just to make people feel better that this man or woman has gone over to the screen. As I said, it's just the image of that happening that is going to quell the fears or the angst or some of the criticism that inevitably comes with the call. And in that sense, okay, I get it. You are giving the people what they want, but as I said, in the form of a performance, and whether they know it or not, you're patting them on the head. So there you go. There's your dog bone.
The other thing too, on penalties, whether a goalkeeper stepped off the line, that is going to now fall under the purview of VAR. Remember, it did everywhere else, but England, they had made a point of saying it wasn't going to fall under VAR purview.
That's that part of it is good in that, I just talked earlier about them wanting to be on the island. And this makes them part of a much bigger country.
And then this one was fascinating to me. There had been calls for the offsides rule for there to be a little bit more leeway there, clear and obvious, that whole deal. And Colina, who's running all this for FIFA, he stepped in and said, no, absolutely not. Offsides is offsides. I don't care if it's by 3 centimeters. And so they've had to accept that. But there is some talk that they're not going to show the lines on television next season because they think that's what's really infuriating fans, and seeing the lines and seeing just how ticky-tack these offsides decisions are. Yeah. And maybe, the less you know, the better in that regard. And so what do you make of that?
Look, I don't know how to say you can't be a little pregnant in Italian. No puoi essere un po', I don't know, pregnant, whatever that is. But that's basically what he's saying. And good for him. Good for him. I mean, it is a slippery slope to try to do anything. But, and by the way, if you ever get a chance to see Colina talk, it is fascinating, mesmerizing, and incredibly enlightening in the way that he talks about the art and the skill of refereeing. And he's very, very honest and open about the subjective nature at times and the human part and the human element of this, even in an age where we have so much technology involved. And he thinks about this, believe me. And so he doesn't he doesn't speak without having thought about things. And in his mind, the way that this shapes out and looks is very, very clear, and he's very definitive on that. And I love that about him.
All right, next question at RobRod_13. Does Sancho make Manchester United an instant title contender?
Well, it would if if he was actually there. But as we are taping this on Monday, August 10th, does it look to be off, Mosse, or is this posturing? What do we think here? Because there's news coming out this morning that Dortmund has said, no, it's off. We're not selling him. We're signing him. He's going to get paid a lot of money, and you took too much time, and we're thanks but no thanks.
Well, Dortmund began their preseason today, so they had set August 10th as something of a deadline of we want to have this figured out one way or the other by August 10th. So August 10th has arrived, and no deal has been agreed upon. So in their view, it's over. Sancho flew out with the rest of the squad today to begin their preseason preparations for the upcoming campaign. Michael Zorc, their sporting director, said, for us, this is a closed matter, and he's going to be with us next season. There's still this suspicion that United are going to end up budging here and paying what Dortmund had been asking for. I have to say, though, the English media's coverage of this whole thing has been, you've kind of seen that sort of arrogant side of the English media that comes out sometimes. And the whole tone of it has been like, why are Dortmund making this so complicated? And talking about how United aren't going to be bullied into this deal. And it's just so funny to me for a player who's under contract with Dortmund for another 3 years, and they've set an asking price. And if you meet our asking price, you can have him. If not, then we're going to keep him. I mean, and I don't know, it's like, that's how a normal negotiation works. And just the tone of the English media's coverage, I think, a couple of things. There's just a fundamental misunderstanding in general about Dortmund as a club. Dortmund now they've been hit by this pandemic like everybody else, but generally speaking, they are a pretty wealthy club. They're the second biggest club in Germany. They have some big sponsorship deals. They play in an 80,000 seat stadium that's sold out every week. They have money. In a perfect world, they would hold on to all their guys and try to go toe to toe with Bayern, but they've come to accept that players don't view Dortmund as a destination. They view it as a stepping stone club. They learned that the hard way with Robert Lewandowski leaving for free to go to Bayern. And so they've had to adjust their transfer strategy accordingly. And decided that's never going to happen again. And they're going to accept being something of a selling club, but they're still able to do it on their terms and generally get the sort of money they want for players. They sold Dembele to Barcelona for over 100 million euros. They sold Pulisic to Chelsea for 65 million euros, which frankly, the way he played this season, they might have undersold him. But at the time, we all thought that was a very good price to get for Pulisic, a guy who wasn't even like a regular starter for them. Even Aubameyang, who was getting up there in age and his contract was running out and he wanted to leave, they still were able to get 60 million euros from Arsenal for him. And they now have they're sitting on these two like lottery tickets in Sancho and Haaland. They view both as like 100 million euro players, which I agree with them on that. And the only question was, well, during this pandemic, would they be so hard up for money that they would sell them at a discount? And they made it clear from the beginning, no, we're sticking to our original valuation of Sancho. And if you're willing to pay that much, you can have him. If not, we'll just hold on to him for another season and hope that by next summer, things are quote unquote back to normal and somebody will pay the money we're asking for. And United, understandably so, during this pandemic said, well, that's not a amount of money we can afford to pay for a player. At least that's what they've said so far. We'll see if they budge on that. But so this is a normal negotiation to me. And if a deal doesn't come off, it doesn't come off. And yet the tone of the English media is like as if Dortmund are doing something wrong here by sticking to their valuation. And like I said, why are you making this so complicated? You're Dortmund. You're supposed to be selling players to Manchester United. That's how things work. And I don't know. It's really rubbed me the wrong way.
Well, I mean, in any deal or any good deal or any good dealer, the age-old wisdom is that you have to be willing to walk away. So does somebody blink here? I mean, is this posturing? Is this just good deal making and leverage that Borussia Dortmund is using?
The question would be Sancho. I think in a perfect world, he would like this deal to happen for him to go to Manchester United. But he's so far he's indicated that if it doesn't happen, he's fine going back to Dortmund. Dembele eventually left Dortmund. They weren't ready to sell him yet when they did. but he like went on strike and refused to play and train and made a big enough fuss about it. So players do have that power. They can make it an untenable situation at their current club, where sometimes the club bends and says, you know what, let's just cut our losses and get this guy out of here if he doesn't want to be here that badly. And like I said, they still were able to get an amazing price for Dembele when he went to Barcelona. So I suppose if Sancho wanted to take it that route, he could force a deal here, but there's no indication so far that that's going to happen. So if he's willing to stick it out at Dortmund for another season, and they're not a club, like I said, that needs the money to keep the lights on. Sure, who wouldn't want 100 million euros coming into the coffers? But if it's not the right deal for them, they're fine holding on to it.
All right, well, come on, yes or no? Does it get done?
Dortmund won't budge. If United say the heck with it, we'll pay what you're asking for, then it gets done. But
how many times do I have to ask this question? So does United budge and pay the money?
I'd lean no, I think.
All right. So August 10th, David Mosse says the Sancho deal does not get done here in the next.
Which means by the time this podcast drops, we'll be posing with a Manchester United jersey at a press conference.
All right. What else, Mosse?
And then we'll end on this. Interesting timing for Alex Dowd to choose this question. The man hasn't played in a month, but I guess we're going here. At Blue Rail 53, you think the Galaxy signing Chicharito was a mistake?
Well, it's not. I mean, it's good timing in that everybody's coming back, and certainly our Trafico is, I guess, going to feature him. But to your question and to your point here, was it the right signing? Yeah, it was absolutely the right signing in that the Galaxy has fashioned themselves over the years, maybe more so than any MLS team, as, I'll say it, the super club, and a club that is going to go out and spend big money on big names and bring stars to a town that is filled with stars, and then a town that expects stars in Los Angeles. And the Q rating and the notoriety and the fame that is associated with someone like Chicharito is reserved for him and very few others. That he has come in and not been the player that you wanted him to be, or you thought that he could be, that doesn't mean that you don't sign him, as long as you knew that this was happening. That's where, I don't know, because I'm not in the locker room, but you had to have known that he is a very specific type of player. He does not own the game in the way that Zlatan owns the game. And yes, he's coming in after Zlatan, and we've said time and time again, it is fair if you're coming on the heels of Zlatan to compare and contrast, even though he's a very different player. He's not going to own the game. He doesn't do things individually in the way that Zlatan does. And by the way, that holds true whether he's in shape or not. That holds true, whether he is at the top of his form or not. But he has scored goals, and he will continue to score goals. Does it look like that this is going to cause more problems, and they're going to have to solve these problems? Yeah, but these problems should have been anticipated. And that's why I say that this was still the right signing to make. Who else out there brings what he brings? Nobody. In terms of the notoriety, like I said, and the attractiveness of a big name player, and checks those boxes. And by the way, he has for a number of years. This has been kind of that holy grail of a signing. But it doesn't matter how good you are. You bring him into at best, mediocre Los Angeles Galaxy at this point, and you bring him in, and he is at best mediocre relative to where he can be. That's a recipe for disaster. Maybe even definitely a recipe for problems. Maybe even a recipe for disaster. But I still think that it was the right thing to do, and because it's specific to the Galaxy, it was the signing that the Galaxy had to do, and that's just because of who they have made themselves into who they have made themselves into being on a consistent basis. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. This league needs someone like the Galaxy. But it means that when these things come along, you're expected and forced to do some of these things. So, yes, that's a long answer to your question, but the answer is yes. This was the right signing. Anything else, Mosse?
That is it.
All right, we come to the end of yet another, shall we say, a long and extended State of the Union. You get some more bonus State of the Union content out there, but, what's time in these days? Time, days, doesn't mean anything anymore. But at the end of each and every pod, I give you a little one for the road. And I was thinking back to, we started off talking about this summer that we are in. I can look out my window and see beautiful sunshine. And I think of, what summer in normal time entails for kids. And I think back to my childhood, and I think back to playing soccer. And summer for me was still very much about soccer, and it revolved around soccer. And I know that, nowadays the debate and the problems associated with youth soccer and the cost involved and the travel involved, that the travel part of it, for me, summer was when I actually traveled, if at all, when it came to soccer. And I remember back to summer of what would have been 1986. I was 15 going on 16 years old. And I was playing travel soccer back then. And our big travel part of that experience happened in the summer. And we went to Colorado. I was playing in Michigan, and we went to Colorado for the Pikes Peak Invitational. And, one of these massive type of tournaments that happened. And that is not going to happen this summer for the majority and almost all. I haven't met anybody yet that is playing in the same way, or certainly traveling in the same way. And that might not happen for a long time. But it was a special thing back then. Traveling happens a whole lot more now, but for us, it was a special thing. And I associate with summer was having that one big trip from a soccer perspective, usually to one of these massive tournaments where you play game after game after game. And this one was to Colorado. The special part of that was that was, as you know, 1986 was a World Cup year. And I vividly remember being in the lobby of the Holiday Inn Hotel in Boulder, Colorado, and watching Diego Maradona light it up. And it was my first experience watching a World Cup, and what an experience it was. They set up a television in the lobby of the Holiday Inn, and all of the different teams, including my team and all the teams from all around the country that were there, congregated each and every day when we weren't playing to watch the proceedings that were going on. And that type of youth soccer experience, I recognize I was very fortunate and privileged to be able to do that. And for a lot of kids, they are not going to have those types of memories and those types of experiences. Hopefully in the future they return in some form or another, because they do create memories that go well beyond the actual kicking of the ball. And that's why sports are important in terms of your social interaction and your social development, and the lessons that are learned and the experiences that you have that go well beyond the actual kicking of the ball, and they will stay with you. And this memory and this experience has stayed with me my entire life. I don't remember if we won or lost. I don't remember if I scored goals, if I played well, but I do remember that sense of community and camaraderie of not just my team, but being introduced and meeting players and teams from all over. And what brought us together was obviously this tournament, but even more so the connection that we had watching, for many of us, our first World Cup. And, that I would go on and then play in World Cups was not something I knew at that age of 15 or 16, but it saddens me that a whole generation now is not getting to have those types of experiences right now because of the challenges that we are going through. Having said that, we are a resilient bunch, both as humans and as soccer playing humans, and in particular as American soccer playing humans. And we will find ways to try to replace those types of experiences. And hopefully we will come out of this at some point in the near future and return to having some of those experiences, because they can be incredible. All right, Mosse, anything before we go?
That is it.
All right, lots of soccer to watch this week. And as we said, the return of Major League Soccer to the in-market Champions League. The final on Tuesday on ESPN of MLS is back, Orlando versus Portland. So we will have a champion. We will have a moment with the confetti and the trophy and the $1 million and the Champions League, CONCACAF Champions League spot, all of that kind of stuff being bestowed on either Portland or Orlando. All right. Thanks so much for listening in each and every week. We appreciate you downloading and reviewing and subscribing and rating and doing all those different things on all the different platforms that we have out there. We thank you for listening. We thank you for watching, and we will see and talk to you again next week on the State of the Union pod. And as always, size the day.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.